Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 27 for December 2nd, 2016. Hey everybody, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another hopefully exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast as we head into December, the final weeks. Things will definitely start slowing down, but we actually have quite a bit of things to talk about this week, including our exclusive story that just went up today regarding Microsoft's plans for Home Hub, which should be really kind of exciting. Also, I'll talk about my HP laptop experience with the Elite X3. We also got some Surface Dial stuff, the new build for Windows 10 Mobile that came out, which is not that exciting, but still we'll chat a little bit about it. And I want to talk a little bit about Fitbit and Pebble, because I think that has some interesting implications for those on Windows 10 Mobile and Windows 10. Zach, how are you doing today?
Not so bad. Just sorting out all of the notes for today's show, because there is a lot to talk about, surprisingly, today. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty bad. It's Friday.
What is usually, people usually love Fridays.
I'm going to lower my thing a little bit here. Yeah, no, Fridays are good. It's kind of weird. I never thought I'd have a job where it'd be Monday through Friday, but it kind of is for this one. So excited about UFC this weekend as well. So, and that's the only sport I watch. Although I watch the Patriots.
What are you, some kind of cool kid?
Yeah.
We don't do sport here.
My opportunity to have beer and pizza, which is like awesome.
I'm having pizza tonight, so I'm treating myself tonight. You know what? We should just go straight into it. Let's go into Home Hub.
Home Hub? Okay.
Do you want to intro it? You intro it.
You can do it because you did the lead on that story.
Right, so this week we published an exclusive regarding Microsoft Home Hub, which for a while now has been a thing that we've known about but didn't really know about. So we knew Home Hub was a thing Microsoft was working on internally, but we didn't know what it was. We had some things like it could be like an advanced guest account, but that was pretty much it. We also heard it could be an Amazon Echo competitor, which it's wrong, but also isn't wrong. So Home Hub is a huge project within Microsoft. It covers a lot of ground, covering a lot of different things. So the Amazon Echo, it covers a advanced guest account. It covers many, many things. And we finally got the scoop on what it all is. So starting off, what is Home Hub? Home Hub is a software feature coming in Windows 10 at some point in the future. We've heard the bulk of it should show up with Redstone 3 and 4, but that could obviously be delayed and pushed even further because this is a big project. Home Hub has been in development for a while. The first bits of Home Hub started showing up in Redstone 1 with things like Cortana on the lock screen, so saying, hey Cortana, probably activated some of yours there. When your device is locked and you get Cortana that just pops up in the middle of the screen, that's kind of part of Home Hub because it works with the always listening thing, which we'll talk about in a minute. Then with Redstone 2, we're expecting to see Family Desktop, which is the air quotes glorified guest account, but it does a lot more than what you think it does. It's not as boring as it sounds. Then Redstone 3, in the plans at least, a new welcome UI, which is welcome screen even, which is a user interface that attempts to replace the refrigerator door, which in many family homes, people use the refrigerator door as like an area to store sticky notes, calendar events, to-do lists, all that kind of thing. Microsoft is trying to tackle that and bring it to Windows with all-in-ones and whatnot. And then there's also the connected home, which this is the interesting bit. Microsoft is looking at bringing things like Hue light bulbs and other smart connected devices straight to Windows 10 and for it to all be controllable via Windows 10 via a connected home app, which all hooks into Home Hub and works like you would expect with Cortana and whatnot. So that's kind of the main basis for Home Hub. There's a lot here. It's pretty exciting. So if we dive into family desktops first and foremost, this is kind of like the underlying tech for Home Hub. Microsoft wants PCs to become a lot more communal between families. Right now, a family PC is just a normal Windows 10 PC that has a number of user accounts that when you turn the computer on, you select your user account, type in your password, or use Windows Hello, whatever, and it signs you into your desktop, and then when you're done, you're signed out. Microsoft finds this method of using a shared computer clunky, and with Family Desktop, they're creating one unified desktop for the whole family, and then that unified desktop can almost contextually show information depending on who's using it. So, for example, a family desktop such as my family, the Bowden family, I'm sitting at the Bowden family PC and I open the calendar app. The calendar app can see all of the family shared appointments. So anything that, say, my significant other or my children, if I had any, shared to the family, I can see in the calendar app. But then if I authenticate myself with the PC using Windows Hello or my password or whatever, and it sees that I'm now using the PC, the calendar app will not only show the family appointments, but my appointments as well. So my kids can't see my personal appointments, obviously, because they're not me, but they can also see the family appointments. I can add to the family appointments. I can add to my personal appointments. And when I'm done, I walk away from the PC. Windows Hello realizes I've gone away. And then it just removes my personal appointments from the calendar app and continues to show the public or the family appointment. So that's one example of how Microsoft is enabling the family desktop to be more easy to use. And with guests, obviously the family desktop will work well with guest accounts as well, because obviously a guest account is just for people who are not from within the family. To-do lists is also another good example for this. So the Project Cheshire app, which I think is what will take advantage of this, you can have to-dos for the family, then to-dos for yourself. Sticky notes, we've heard that sticky notes at some point will have roaming capability, so you can write a sticky note, pin it to your desktop, and that will sync across accounts or across devices where you're logged in, which is also another thing that isn't there yet, but will be pretty exciting. And this functionality will also extend to phones as well. So if you're using Windows Phone, you calendar up in the Windows Phone, same thing, you'll see your appointments and the family appointments. If you're using iPhone or Android, if you're using Microsoft apps with your iPhone or Android device, this will work there as well. So Microsoft isn't letting third-party platforms get away with all this functionality. This will work across everything, because Microsoft's vision right now is to tackle everything, so Android, iOS included. And this is very interesting because this allows for the whole welcome UI and whatever else to be a thing as well. What do you think about this, Dan?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I think, what people were expecting, and some of the rumors were that this was going to be some speaker that was Cortana. And that was really unoriginal. And it's funny because people wanted that. And at the same time, they were saying, like, that's just another Me Too device. Who cares kind of thing. And it's totally true. Like how they just put out some wireless speaker, runs Cortana, some kind of Windows IoT kind of thing. You just put it in your home. It's like, okay, that kind of is interesting, but how is that pushing that category forward? And, like, kind of what's the point of it? And I don't have an Amazon Echo. I don't have Google Home, obviously. And those products actually don't really appeal to me. I'm not really into the idea of just like a speaker and I can just ask it things. I don't even use Cortana PC like that. Like I'm not dumb. I don't need random facts about the world. I always love these commercials. Always like, how deep is the Grand Canyon? Like, who cares? Like, is this really like, I don't know. So those products are pretty limited for me. When we saw the details for what they want to do with Home Hub, though, I thought it was really interesting because it's like, all right, we have this Windows 10 thing. It's a pretty powerful operating system that none of our competitors have. Like Google has, obviously Android, but Android it's for your phone. It's pretty limited what you can do with it. Not that they couldn't adapt it for something like this. It could, but, there's a lot of limitations there. And so this idea of like having a computer and a display, to me, makes way more sense, especially when you bring in the fact that this is just Surface Hub for home users and consumers. Like obviously, though, consumers aren't going to go buy an $8,000 PC for their wall. Though I totally love to have one. But like, this is like that solution. For one, if you're already running Windows 10, you're just going to get this update and presumably have this ability to turn any PC into a Home Hub. So that's already pretty huge because you don't need to go buy new hardware. However, we know this other angle that companies like HP and Lenovo are going to have devices. We've even seen some of those devices already that what they have planned. And it's really kind of interesting. It's sort of taking this idea of like a screen-centric device. Like you can, of course, use keyboards with these, just pair up a Bluetooth keyboard or connect it to USB. You can do that. But the idea here is you have this like 17-inch or 15-inch screen in your kitchen, hanging in the living room. And it's a place where the family can go and have calendars, write down notes, just like, you mentioned with the refrigerator. When I grew up, that's how we did chores. We had a little chore list there. This is really kind of, and it's funny because everybody knows this is supposed to be the future. Whenever you see movies, this is the idea. Like you have a screen and people write notes to each other. It's smart, it's interactive. And Microsoft has that ability to make that a reality. And so I think what they're they've planned here is just smart / playing their cards. They're playing to their best, capabilities. This idea of having a screen / a full operating system makes us way more powerful than whatever Alexa and Google Home can do, which are literally just assistants. They're just things that answer questions. Okay, you can, and Amazon's, of course, is tied to Amazon completely. So you need to okay, I can order stuff. That stuff's cool. Don't get me wrong. But if it'd be neat if Cortana can ever hook up to Amazon, if they would ever allow that. I'm not sure they would. But, those are limited use scenarios as opposed to having a full PC. And then we also saw a lot of these apps that they're coming out with, things like sticky notes, which right now, sticky notes, they're on your PC. You can, scribble, leave yourself a note, but they want to add roaming capabilities to that, right? So that these notes then pop up on your on other computers, on these computers, all that. Once you start bringing that into it, and we didn't even talk about Groove, or did you? I don't know. Did you mention? I don't think I saw that. Did you mention Groove?
Groove in what context?
Well, the fact that they're actually looking into doing family plans for Groove.
I did not mention that. I didn't.
So that's an exclusive on this podcast if you're listening. They are exploring finally doing family plans, which is both exciting and troubling at the same time. It's like they're looking into it, but it's not something that I think is
I think what we heard was that they knew it was a thing that they wanted to look at, but there was literally no priority on it right now. So it's a thing that they're talking about internally, but whether it shows up anytime soon is another question. And that's kind of the trend for a lot of this family sharing home hub stuff. The UI, the welcome UI, which is kind of the big focal point here for the all-in-ones and stuff. So home hub is designed mainly for all-in-ones and two-in-ones with touchscreens and Windows Hello and Cortana listening and stuff. So the welcome screen is, like we said, it's like that corkboard, that virtual corkboard that you can stick sticky notes on and shopping lists and to-dos and calendar alerts and stuff. And then obviously you can say from a distance, hey Cortana, the Cortana UI will pop up. She will show you what's going on there if you ask her questions and so on and so forth. That's kind of the idea here. Now, we've heard that Home Hub may be one of the first features, whenever it does show up, to feature Project Neon designs. Now, the concept we've got in our article is a very early version of the Home Hub concepts. We've seen many variations of the Home Hub concepts since, and they've all changed. Some of the more recent ones have blur in them and, more animations. We've seen video animation, like actual video of what Microsoft wants Home Hub to look like. So that shows off all the animations that we've seen. So our report last week on what Project Neon is still holds up. It's still very, fluid and nice looking. What the screen...
I just want to mention something real quickly. So Jonathan Sampson, who used to be on the Edge team, mentions one thing he loves about Echo is the microarray and the fact that it hears him. The technology that they want for Home Hub includes what they call far-field, hands-free interactions from 10 to 12 feet for Cortana. So that is part of the Home Hub plan, as well as hardware. I don't want to say it's a requirement, but recommendation for OEMs when they're making these devices to use this technology. So that is being done in conjunction with Home Hub. So that, the idea that it works better. Connect is interesting. That's where that stuff started from. But Connect is actually, it's like 3 years old now, the technology. So this would be a much newer version that's much more reliable.
Yeah, the Home Hub UI, I keep calling it the UI, the welcome screen is what Microsoft calls it, will obviously look... The concept we've got is what Microsoft's concepts are internally, but like I said, there's been small revisions to it since and so on. So obviously concepts, not final design, things do and will change for whenever this does show up in working code. That's always the case. But yeah, our concept is actually based off internal concepts that we've been shown. So we weren't allowed to use the actual source materials. So what I had to do is jump into Photoshop and kind of build upon what we've seen, but with our own elements and stuff. So whatever else. So what you're looking at is basically what we've seen from internal stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about that too, because we're hearing that, getting back to Project Neon, which we talked about last week, the new design language, that what we're seeing in these Home Hub, designs and concepts is sort of the first real examples of that UI. And so the idea here, of course, to me, it sort of looks a little bit like material design, but then you can argue that material design looks a lot like what Metro was in modern from Microsoft. But it's this continuation of thin fonts, Although we're starting to see some of the fonts get thicker again. I don't know if you guys noticed in the store apps now, their titles are kind of thicker.
Yeah, and in some of the concept we've seen for Home Hub and the Project Neon documents we've seen, there are some thicker fonts there as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, so they seem to be, obviously, some of this is tweaking up things and coming up with a universal approach to design in Windows 10. The other thing you're starting to see, of course, is that blurred background, and transparencies and kind of that stuff coming back, which obviously allows the text to stand out again. And this differs a little bit from like Windows Phone 7. Windows Phone 7, if you recall, didn't have backgrounds. It was just black with text. And it was very easy to read. Of course, it also had this text overlapping onto the screen. You had to scroll over to see the rest. They moved away from that panorama aspect. And they still want to keep, text only, no Chrome. But they have added, obviously, the ability for backgrounds, and they want that. But backgrounds can be distracting for text. So an easy way to do that, of course, is adding a translucent layer to the back so it's kind of blurred out, the kind of bokeh effect. And we're starting to see that with this stuff. And I think it looks really cool. I hope to see more of this neon stuff. And you shared with me some shots of neon, which we haven't shared publicly. But, it looks really cool, I think, for people who are like, love the modern design / very minimal. Here's just text. They seem to be really kind of focusing on that, but with an updated version.
I kind of get a kind of Vista vibe from some of the stuff we've seen. I don't know what I guess it might be the blur that's doing it for me.
Right,
but
yeah. I think that's right, Arrow.
Yeah. Which I do miss, actually. I know people say Arrow sucks, but I do miss Arrow.
Well, the problem with Arrow, especially when it came out, was
it was
too
intensive.
Tied to hardware.
Yeah.
Like, if you remember, you had to, pick what level you wanted based on your hardware. And that was really frustrating for a lot of people. I think now we're reaching the point where, hardware can handle this stuff, even like low-end hardware. So it makes it a little bit easier. And speaking of, we can talk about this later too. We don't know what it means per se, but in Windows 10 Mobile, the fast ring build, they're changing how stuff is, rendered? I'm using the correct word there.
They said rendered. They changed the rendering engine.
How apps are rendering basically their graphics. And so some key changes going on there. And we were told that it's basically done to make it more efficient and, make it faster and all that kind of stuff. So we're starting to see some changes there. And I guarantee you that stuff is tied to this, I think. I really think that's really tied to Neon and changes that are coming down the road.
We mentioned that Cortana will be always listening with the welcome screen. I know she can already do that on desktops if you set her up to be, but obviously on an all-in-one with Home Hub, this makes more sense. Microsoft are actually working on a lot more Cortana improvements specifically for Home Hub. Codenamed Famtana internally, which we think is one of the best code names we've ever heard. Famtana is basically Microsoft is working on making Cortana more family friendly. So right now she works with individual accounts, but with the Home Hub stuff, she will be able to work for the family. So she'll have a family notebook and you can share family reminders, calendar events, notes, and all that other stuff with the family Cortana, and she will keep your personal stuff personal. Again, if you're authenticated into the machine, you can ask Cortana your personal stuff. She will show you your personal stuff. If you're not at the machine, she won't do so. So that's one of the ways Microsoft is kind of segregating Cortana to keep your information safe from other family members and children or whatever else. But then also making her useful to the whole family. So you can be across the room, for example, and you can just add something to the calendar for the whole family to see on the welcome screen on the when it's on the fridge or whatever, which is excellent. And then obviously if you want to look at some things that are on your personal account, you can do so that way as well. This is pretty cool. This also works for things like notifications. So obviously Cortana handles notifications between the phone and PC right now. If you're not at the Home Hub, it won't do that. But if you're at the Home Hub, it will do that. Just things like that, small things like that, that will make sense when using a Home Hub machine. And this is actually one of the most exciting things about this, because right now Cortana is very individual. Cortana works with my account and my account only. And then if someone else is using Cortana on my machine, they're using it through my account. With Famtana, hopefully this will be changing. And I believe the Amazon Echo and Google Home don't actually do this right now, right?
Right. So that's a big limitation right now. Now, that's something obviously they can overcome. I'm sure they will. But right now, if you got Google Home, you tie it to one account, so it can access all that stuff on that account. But it doesn't make sense for families, per se, because they can't have a calendar with separate items that is shared. So it's really kind of a limited system. And this is where Microsoft has greater flexibility, I would say, because now we're not just people have to understand Home Hub is just not like a UI slash lock screen with a calendar. There's also a lot of apps and core services from Microsoft, and that's what we were seeing internally regarding like the Groove Pass I was talking about. Now, like the problem there is the Groove team has their own priorities of stuff they need to do, and now the guys who are doing these Home Hub stuff need to be like, "Hey, Groove team, can you do this thing for us?" And they're like, "I'm really busy at the moment, but we'll take a look at it." You know, that's how Microsoft works, and it makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to make this happen, right? You don't, and this is like where we talk about stuff coming online. Like, you don't want to just be like, "Here's Home Hub, it's a lock screen," you know, with a shared calendar. Like that is the bare minimum, but that is actually part of it, right? But there's a lot of these core apps that need to share and roam data. And then of course, will open that API up to developers. So you can get third-party apps that are like family-orientated that will hook into the system. And that's what they're doing. We saw references for this API that they're going to create so that developers can then use this as well in their apps. So I know when people like, one of the toughest things, we were talking about this before the podcast went live, about writing for our core audience, is like, no matter what we talk about, it should have come out 2 years ago, according to them. And like, I kind of get that feeling, but at the same time, there are so much stuff that has to happen to make this vision of what they want to be. And that's where some of the problem is. Like the stuff that Zach and I are seeing won't all come to be because of these issues of like other teams need to work on things. And so we'll see like an initial release and then they'll build off of it kind of thing happen. But when you look at the vision of what they want to have this thing to be, it's really awesome. I think it's really fantastic. And it's not just like, I mean, if you look at like what Google Home is, it's like, okay, it's a it's just Google Home on your phone, but a speakerphone, you know, for everybody. It's like, that's really not that exciting, but this at least pushes things a lot further. And it really is way more encompassing. Like when you talk about the API for app developers, like now that opens up a whole other world for not just indie app developers, but like major companies to go like, okay, let's jump on this and we'll use this API and, you know, now everybody can share this stuff, right? So I think there's a lot of possibility here. It's real exciting. We're still, you know, we think about a year out before this, you know, really kind of comes together, when the plan we saw at least is like hardware devices will come out for this time next year. And so, which makes sense for the holiday season kind of thing. But we're going to start to see parts of this come into RS2, hopefully, and RS3 in the fall, which should be that kind of main tie-in. So we're still a little way out. And that, I guess I want to say, addresses, hopefully, some of the issues with Cortana. This isn't completely Cortana dependent. Cortana is part of it, obviously, but this isn't like all Cortana. There's a lot more stuff going on here than that. So for people who don't have Cortana or have Cortana and aren't impressed by it, we're still, I would say, like a year out, or you know, a little less than a year, if this thing still happens, for Cortana to improve and expand to other countries. And I'm pretty sure we'll see, you know, some movement in the next 12 months there on some of those things. But,
there is heavy Cortana integration with the Home Hub stuff, and we'll be getting onto that mainly with the connected home stuff in a second. But just because there's integration doesn't necessarily mean it's dependent on Cortana. You can still use the Home Hub welcome screen and calendar apps and the connected home app and whatever else without having to use Cortana commands. You just have to obviously use the touchscreen or a mouse and keyboard. The Cortana integration is mainly for voice, and the reason a lot of people don't have access to Cortana right now is because Microsoft aren't training other languages for Cortana. Cortana, at the end of the day, is mainly a voice assistant, and the Amazon Echo is a voice assistant, Google Home is a voice assistant. Home Hub is that plus more, because it's got a screen and obviously a UI and whatever else, but it also has the functionality of these dedicated home personal, you know, virtual assistant devices, and one of the areas in which they shine the most is with the connected home stuff. So if you have an Amazon Echo, you could say, "Hey Alexa, turn on my bathroom light," if you're using a smart light bulb or whatever, and the device will do it. Microsoft is also working on this for Windows 10. Called Connected Home, they refer to it as. They're working on a connected home app that will incorporate all of the smart devices in your house, such as Hue light bulbs, locks, what else are the smart things? There's plenty of smart home devices you can buy these days. And
Hughes is the big one.
Yeah.
Nest would be another. I would say some of the Ecobee. Some of these are rely on like is Z-Wave, which is really nice because Z-Wave is basically it's an open connected thing that developers basically say ours is Z-Wave compatible, so it operates with any. We actually haven't seen reference to Z-Wave, which I think is kind of interesting, but I think that'd be probably pretty trivial for them to introduce.
Yeah, we saw references to Open Connectivity Foundation and the Open Translators to Things. They're the two form thingies we heard from sources that devices will work with for this. The app itself, and what we've been told, will be similar to most other smart home device apps, whatever. You have a UI that has at the top a bunch of groups, so you can have bedroom stuff, front room stuff, living room stuff, kitchen stuff, so on and so forth, and you click on it, then you get all the devices that are listed in that specific room. Then obviously, if you have a device that supports customization, such as hue light bulbs, you can select one of the light bulbs, then it will give you the options to change the colors and turn on and off at certain times and whatnot. Then you've also got presets, so when you wake up in the morning, hit Good Morning on the Connected Home app. And obviously, if you have Good Morning presets, it will open your curtains, for example, unlock the front door, get your coffee ready, so on and so forth, then you walk out the door, whatever. Home Hub, if you're not familiar with smart homes, this will be an entirely alien concept to you. But if this is something you're interested in, this is a huge thing. And to me, this is possibly the biggest thing Home Hub will tackle.
And I was going to say, I think it's really big because the current problem, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, Microsoft's going to miss this whole smart home thing. I think you're very totally wrong in that. Smart home stuff is in its infancy right now, and there's a lot of problems with it, including reliability and incompatible systems, both for services and hardware. You have Samsung with their SmartThings system, which is actually a pretty good system, but it's completely proprietary, although it has some, I think you can connect up some things to it. You have, Hughes out there, which has their own API, and you can do some stuff with it. We have Hutro on Windows 10 right now, which is a really good third-party app for that. And so there's a lot of stuff that's competing. It's also super expensive to do. Someone was asking me the other day about smart home things. And I was like, it's cool, but if you rent, you're kind of screwed. I mean, you can do Hughes and everything, but Hughes is super expensive to get into. You just start a kit, I think it's like $75 or $125. And then the bulbs are I think $20 or $30 a piece. Now they're supposed to last forever, but they're it's an expensive thing to do. And if you rent, it's harder because you can't really drill into a lot of your walls or rewire stuff. If you have a home, you have to worry about, is the home new or old, and the wiring there. And so there's a lot that's going on here with this stuff that I don't think, it's like wearables. There's a lot of room for innovation. And interestingly, I think with Windows 10, this could actually solidify and help bring all this stuff together, because there's so many people that actually do have a PC right now at home. Either it's a laptop or a desktop PC. And if Windows 10 can actually act as that hub and act as the intermediary for all these sort of services, that actually works for everyone, not just Microsoft. It works for a lot of these third-party companies as well. And so I think it's really interesting. Another criticism I've been seeing is people saying, well, Microsoft doesn't do consumer stuff well. I disagree a bit with that. For one, I mean, people still buy laptops and PCs. The PC market is still 90% Windows. It's, and Apple just, switched on their Mac Pro, the new MacBooks. I'm not expecting those things to be, the new must-have device. So Microsoft still does well in consumer. You saw the Xbox out there, which is doing extremely well. So they do consumer stuff well. Now, this idea that, well, home PC market is declining, so how will this work? I think is just looking at it wrong. That's the reason why they're doing this, is to bring the home PC market to basically give a second life to the PC. It's not just a personal computer anymore. It's this idea of a social computer that we can all access. And I think this is the smart way of going hey, let's configure this concept for this, the next 10, 15 years going forward, and what we can do with it. So I think this is actually a really smart play to make your home PC relevant again.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the goal with Home Hub and everything is to make Windows 10 the central hub for your entire home, not just smart devices, but your family. Obviously, again, with the virtual corkboard and the welcome screen, a communal PC isn't really a thing, because PC, as you say, stands for personal computer. I think what Microsoft is trying to do here at some point down the line is transform these personal computers into communal computers, because we've heard when we were talking to people about this, the word communal came up a lot. Microsoft wants these. I mean, not everybody has shared PCs, of course. I mean, people like us, we have our own personal desktops and stuff. And in this case, the Home Hub welcome screen wouldn't be needed, but the Connected Home app would be pretty nice. And you know, we wouldn't need to have all the family sharing stuff. The Connected Home app, I believe, is a standalone app, or will be a standalone app, so that will just work independently from the Home Hub stuff itself. But then, of course, you can go downstairs into your kitchen, and if you are living with multiple people, a Home Hub device wouldn't be so bad, because obviously you could have your Microsoft account on there, and if you're downstairs, you can listen to your music, you can see your emails and notifications come in when you're downstairs. Just walk away, come back upstairs to your office, and then that PC is no longer your issue. You don't have to worry about people seeing anything that they shouldn't be seeing, and all that stuff.
And let's think about what came out during the Surface Studio events and was brought up again this week, which is this idea of the people bar. Take the concept of the people bar and now put it onto Home Hub.
Yes.
Everybody's listening to this, the light bulb just clicked, right? Yeah. You have your whole family down there in that little taskbar. You just plop up mom and send her a file. She's out shopping. You call her on Skype right from this device. Instant communication. There's a lot of cool stuff that can be done here with this that's going to basically streamline the sharing of information between families. And I think that's a really big market. Some companies have tried to tap into this stuff before, but you need like a big player to really sort of bring it all together. And I think that's what Home Hub is, going to be that attempt to do. And I think it's a smart decision. I think we're kind of done with this idea of like a personal computer. We get it. We all have little devices around us that can send information to other people. It's like, okay, how can we do something different with that now? Well, let's make something that we can all share and use at the same time. I think that's a really cool thing to do. So, I don't know.
Moving on to the almost final segment of this Home Hub saga, hardware. Now, the original reports for Home Hub indicated that Home Hub would be a dedicated hardware device. This is something that we heard whispers of, and a number of other people also heard whispers of. Obviously, that turns out not to be true, but that doesn't mean Home Hub can't have dedicated hardware that it shines on. Microsoft aren't building that device as far as we know, but Microsoft are talking to third-party OEMs and asking them and talking to them about making all-in-ones and two-in-ones specifically for Home Hub. So we believe Lenovo and HP are already in talks with Microsoft about bringing touch-enabled all-in-ones with Home Hub to the market in late 2017. These devices will be designed to look at home in a kitchen or a living room. Unlike a normal PC, which is kind of ugly and gross, these will actually look like home devices. That makes sense. I think LG at CES this year showcased the Windows 10 fridge, right?
Right. Yeah.
We haven't heard anything about that in this for the Home Hub stuff, but that's just a great example of what people could make for Home Hub. Imagine that just with the Home Hub welcome screen. That would make perfect sense. And then, of course, I didn't mention this. I should mention this. This is an important detail. A Home Hub PC is still a full PC underneath. The welcome screen can be lifted up, and you can access your taskbar with Start Menu and Action Center and all of that. So the full functionality is always there if you need it, but obviously for these communal devices, it makes more sense to have a much more friendly touchscreen UI just to get things thrown on there and tick off things quite easily and whatnot. So yeah, the hardware stuff, large touchscreens, Windows Hello enabled, obviously microphones that can hear you from a distance, because Cortana will obviously have to hear you from across the room. Just to say, if you're asking her to turn some lights on and you're sitting, in another room, even, you just need to shout it. It will work, and all of that stuff.
Game support, Windows Hello.
Yeah, all of that stuff. So all of these devices will shine with these devices, and again, they don't necessarily have to be two all-in-ones. They can be two-in-one smaller devices that sit on a shelf, for example, or can be hung on a wall. I think we've seen a Lenovo thing which looks pretty interesting, which I don't think is a thing that's out yet, is it? Right.
So for those who don't know, their plans, at least we saw for Lenovo, was I forgot the name of the tablet. I actually have it on my back shelf back there. It's a little 8-inch tablet, and it has that metal hinge that you can act as a base, or it can flip around. You can hang this tablet on the wall because it's got a little hole in it. So if you're doing work, you can hang this thing up. So it's basically that, just much bigger. It's I think it's a 17-inch one, and it's pretty interesting. But this idea is you could just it's basically a large screen. It can have a base. You can then hang it up if you need to. You can also switch the angle around so you can type on it. It's a pretty neat concept. They have an Android version too of this thing, but we haven't seen one this big before, meant for the living room or the kitchen. So yeah, those are some of the ideas that they're kind of tossing around with this stuff. Now, Microsoft could, of course, make their own hardware for this. Obviously, they make Surface Hub. This is basically the software around it. If you guys don't recall, Surface Hub actually runs its own version of Windows 10. So it's Windows 10 underneath, but it has its own layer to it. And so I think this is kind of like the consumer version of that. It's taking that concept. But if Microsoft, like say all these OEM partners, they're like, we don't want to do this, not now, Microsoft would then build their own hardware. And Nadella's always talked about this. He talked about this with phones too, saying if no one builds those phones, we'll build them, and they're not there yet, obviously. But I think Microsoft's obviously very capable of building this kind of hardware if they need to, and they may do their own showcase version. We're not 100% sure what the plans are for there. And we're not even sure 100%, what's going on with Home Hub. It's just one of these projects that have a lot of team input, but Microsoft obviously has a lot of priorities they need to get done, and so you have to figure out what you can and can't do. And that's always the tough thing. How this stuff happens is you come up with your ideas, you go to your program manager, then they go to the team leaders and all that, and you propose these things, and then the higher up sign off on it or ask for ETAs and budgets and all this. And it's a competitive process still. You have to try to make a case for this stuff to happen. So we have to, wait and see exactly what happens with it.
That leads quite well into the timeline portion of Home Hub. So we've talked about all the main features now. It's time to talk about when we can expect to see all this stuff. Now, we've mentioned Redstone 3 for the bulk of it. That's what internal schedules say right now. And as Dan says, the Home Hub project is a big one, and not all of it is certain right now. So a number of sources have said to us, a lot of it's on the chopping board, a lot of it can be delayed dramatically. So for the connected home stuff and the welcome screen, which is kind of the two big things, originally Redstone 3 could be Redstone 4, or maybe even longer than that at this point. We don't know. But this is stuff that Microsoft definitely wants to have done at some point. We have not heard anybody say specifically that all of this stuff is cancelled. Just they're prioritizing other things right now is what we've basically been hearing. So family desktops, I believe, is a Redstone 2 feature. If not Redstone 2, definitely Redstone 3. The welcome screen and the connected home stuff later, most likely. And what was the other one? Famtana. I believe Famtana might be a Redstone 3 thing as well. But that remains to be seen. So, of course, although Microsoft has internal projections for this stuff, that doesn't make it immune from delays or even cancellations. That's a frequent occurrence at any tech company of Microsoft's size. Internal projects don't always work out, and sometimes they rise and fall entirely without public knowledge of their plans. Most of the sources we've spoken to have all said that a lot of the Home Hub stuff has been delayed for more important changes and improvements that need to be made to Windows 10, which is understandable. No single source has explicitly said that the big Home Hub stuff has been cancelled, but we have heard that it might be a while before any of the interesting stuff begins to show up in public builds and insiders, and then eventually to the public. So that's kind of it for Home Hub. That's all the main stuff. Of course, there's much more little things that we haven't detailed. But obviously they will show up when they do. But these are the big main selling points for Home Hub that Microsoft proposed internally. So people have been asking us for ages what Home Hub was, and we've finally been able to tell people, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, definitely big plans. I say we head now into talking about the laptop.
Yes.
Definitely interesting technology. So first of all, let me preface all this, even though some of our audience knows this, but I notice a lot of people still don't get it, which is the fact that this really isn't a consumer device. And so I always see the question of people are like, why would you spend $600 on this device when you just go buy a laptop? And so I want to address that. First, let's talk about what the laptop is. It is for the Elite X3, which is from HP, which is, of course, a Windows 10 mobile device. They call it a 3-in-1. It's technically a phone, but it can do obviously more than that. And this thing is basically, and the laptop is basically a screen and battery. You take it around with you, you open up, and this thing connects up to it. So you connect the Elite X3 up to it via a Type-C connector, which gives you the best experience, or through Miracast, which gives a less than ideal experience, but it still totally works. And the idea, of course, is when you need a larger screen or a keyboard, or both, and you're out and about, you have it. And I tell you, it actually does make a big difference. And the idea here is you need to do an email, you need to do a PowerPoint or a Word, and you just want to go in there and type. So the hardware comes with 3 USB Type-C plugs on it. One's for charging, and of course, one's for connecting the phone, and the other one's just for accessories, including connecting up like an Ethernet port if you want. It then has a pretty big 48 watt-hour battery. It's a 12.5-inch full HD display, which is matte. It's non-touch. And then it has a full keyboard, which I would describe as very much like the Surface Pro 4 keyboard. In fact, it feels very similar to that one, which is awesome, with a nice little trackpad. And the keyboard's backlit too. And that's basically it. It weighs, I think, 2.4 pounds, which is not heavy, but it's not really light either. It just feels like a really dense device. And I said it in the review that HP nailed this hardware. Like, this is like some premium quality stuff. It's just, I don't know, everything about it. The finish of it is just fantastic. It feels great to hold. The way the screen opens is neat. The keyboard is, I just love typing on it. The display looks really good. It renders the text very well. I like the matte, which is very good if you're going to spend all day writing. And it doesn't charge the phone through fast charge. It's a trickle charge. And there's some limitations with it, of course. My issue, of course, at this point is basically all on Windows 10 Mobile. There's, Continuum is still a new concept. The technology is still new. And we know it's going to evolve. It's going to get better. We already seen some stuff for Redstone 2 that's supposed to come out, which I think goes a long way to making it much better. So right now the experience is so-so. Plugging in, it actually works pretty well. It's not as fast or ideal as a laptop, but it once you start using it, it's actually kind of neat. I actually do like using it. That's not to say I don't need improvements. I do. Now, as to why the $600 and why would a consumer buy this versus a laptop, there is no reason why a consumer would buy this over a laptop. And that's not what HP is saying. HP makes this basically for enterprise. Now, for those who don't know, when you're an enterprise, okay, so you do just buy a laptop there too, but it's not that clear cut. If you work for a company, some companies require encryption and remote management of devices and a lot of high-end stuff. So we're talking about vPro and TPM chips here from Intel, which only come in the higher SKUs that they have for the Core i chips. Those laptops start at just over $600. Okay, and that's the lowest. Most of them go $800, $900, and then they go up to the $2,000 range, being into the ThinkPads that are all spec'd out. So they're they can be expensive, but they're not. If you need that security, there's nothing cheaper than the laptop, actually. So the price there is that. Not only that, when you have this laptop, you go through your IT department, who then has to set it up. They have to configure the remote VPN stuff, security, remote device management. So you're paying for your IT department, who also then have to maintain this device, which is also an expense. You then have to license all that software on that device too, as well as if they have a desktop at home. Those are double licenses there. So there's a lot of costs that consumers don't ever face that enterprise does. This device basically negates most of that because it's, just as everybody points out, a display and battery. So there are no costs with it. There's no security needed for it. The security comes through the phone, which has all that stuff that I mentioned. Same thing, all the software is licensed there. If you do need to use desktop software that's licensed, of course, you can do the virtualization stuff, which we covered with HP Workspace. So there's that. Of course, you don't need to pay for HP Workspace. If you're a big enough company, you can do your own virtualization of your own licensed software. Get that taken care of. You can even use remote desktop if you wanted to, which is a free solution from Microsoft. So that's the play here. So there actually is, I would say, cost savings for companies to use this. It still doesn't mean it's, in an ideal world, everybody would have their, Samsung, Galaxy phone. They would have a ThinkPad X1 Carbon that's all spec'd out. They would have a full PC at home or at their office, but all this stuff is going to cost $3,000-$4,000 plus then the maintenance for IT to make, control those devices. This is an interesting play. If you only have one device, someone can actually steal your laptop and it wouldn't matter. There's nothing on there. There's no security risk there. So these are nuanced arguments. And I totally get that if you're a consumer, you might have even just fallen asleep. That's totally fine. But that's why I have to like stress that, because that's the context here. Having said that, a lot of this technology starts off in enterprise and professional environments and then trickles down to the consumer market. BlackBerry is a perfect example of a company that did that. Pagers were an example of that. Pagers were for business people and emergency medical. Then I remember there's a period everybody had a pager, just regular people. A lot of this technology starts off that way and then trickles down. And it's going to be a matter of time. Everybody knows that, the current ARM processors are catching up to sort of laptops and where they are. They're still a gulf, but they're getting pretty powerful. And this idea that the future of mobile computing is going to be a lot of these ARM processors, I think is pretty important. And I think that's where this continuum play kind of comes into it. So in 2 years, maybe this will make more sense for consumers. Right now, it's more just like something to keep an eye on, because I think it's really kind of a neat idea, but it's in its infancy. But someone has to start somewhere. You can't just wait till like the hardware's already done and go, hey, let's go do this thing now. You start prototyping it now, you get it out there, you get feedback. So by the time it's actually can hit the consumer market, you already have it all built out. You don't need to start from scratch.
I think what a lot of people struggle to, why some people struggle to see why this is a thing, is because Continuum is so basic right now. It's very basic, one window at a time, universal Windows apps only. And I can see why people would be confused by somebody who would want to buy one of these. But when Continuum does show up to have Windows support, a full desktop UI, and then eventually emulation of Win32 apps, which is apparently in the works, I think a lot of people will start to see the benefit of having a Windows 10 mobile powered laptop, for example, because that's basically what the laptop is. It's a Windows 10 mobile powered laptop. Right now, it's not built into the laptop because it's powered by the phone. But at some point, I fully expect OEMs to be able to build laptops with keyboard, trackpad, screen, clamshell style, or tablet, whatever, two in one. That doesn't run full Windows 10, but runs Windows 10 mobile. Using low-end ARM chips, or just low-end Intel chips even if they want, to tackle Chromebooks, because Chromebooks are doing this already. The Chromebook isn't a real laptop, is it? It's a browser, a glorified browser that you can download plugins for. Microsoft can do the same thing with Windows 10 Mobile. Once you realize, just imagine the full Windows 10 desktop, and then imagine having that for the Continuum environment on Windows 10 Mobile. That's basically Microsoft's goal. It should be pretty interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and I think once you bring in if the x86 emulation stuff is, accurate, like that obviously changes the game in my opinion. Now, there's a lot of questions about that stuff. Like, how does it, how well does it even perform? We don't know. We're not even 100% sure if that's what their plan is or what the limitations are going to be. So there's a lot of questions on that stuff that still need to be answered. But I think it should be clear Microsoft would be looking at that as a possible solution, especially since Intel kind of backed out of making, the chips that we were expecting to be in a mobile x86 device. So I think this is the smart route. I think once you do that, it definitely does change the game. This idea of Windows 10 Mobile on a small laptop-like device, I think is really interesting, especially once you throw a UWP model into that, how that can help there. Now, of course, would you remiss to point out that this feels a lot like Windows RT and the original Surface 1 and Surface 2 devices. I would still say it's a little bit different. The goals, were different. If you think about what Surface RT was, that was more about hide the desktop, pretend it's not there. In fact, it was weird that the desktop was there, where this is going, no, the desktop should be there and not just a start screen. The app model is completely different because when those Surface RT came out, there was no real argument to make those apps for desktop. Now they've kind of reversed it. They're starting from the desktop, making UWP and saying, okay, now let's put it on this kind of device. So the starting point is different. The UI has obviously changed quite a bit. And I would say actually UWP at this stage is more advanced than where the Surface RT was when it came out as far as app selection and abilities and all that kind of stuff. So I think they were kind of in a better position to be able to sort of do this. And we've already seen there's benefits that Microsoft is losing out to for Google with the Chrome stuff, which is basically schools, right? This is primarily a U.S. phenomenon, but schools, even my local school here in Marlborough, do use Chrome devices for students. And so the question is, okay, so what does Microsoft do about that? The reason those schools are using those devices is, I would say, there's at least two major reasons. One's cost. PCs are just too expensive compared to a Chromebook. Two, it's the device management stuff. The fact that Chrome can't really run full apps and get these weird viruses and stuff like that makes device management way better than controlling all of basically Windows. If you can do that with Windows 10 Mobile and go even a step further with even have it more powerful, but still bring those same benefits, Microsoft can stop losing that market, which is important to them. They've been pretty big in education for a long time. And this gives them a reason to get back to elementary schools and everything. So I think there's a lot of play here for this technology and these plans, these shell changes, which the shell changes, are pretty massive, right? We were talking about Continuum, but the need to do there to make that experience happen. It's the same experience that needs to happen with Home Hub too. That's also shell changes. So there's a lot that needs to happen with start screens and the way things operate that still needs to get done.
Yeah, no, I think it's the Continuum idea and the future of Continuum is very exciting. I mean, I know you mentioned the laptop is mainly for enterprise, but that price tag is just unbelievable for for a computer that isn't a computer. $600 is a lot.
Well, they go cheaper than that, but the experience is not nearly as good, nor the hardware quality.
No, right, yeah.
I would actually say, Mr. Mobile did a really good look at a really cheap Chromebook and asked that question, like, is this, something, that's good? And yeah, there's still limitations that are being hit there. So I don't know. It's something, I think there's a lot of plans for Windows. I think that's what Zach and I keep learning more about, is the fact that
it never ends.
Yeah, they really want Windows everywhere, and they're adapting it. So, we keep saying this, that in the future, the distinction between Windows 10 Mobile and Windows 10 PC is going to be very, very minimal. That's the goal. They already did a lot of that with one core, but now they're doing a lot of it with the shell too. And so we're still seeing that happen, but then you throw HoloLens into the mix, right? So now Neon is about also bringing HoloLens apps across devices and desktop to HoloLens and all that kind of stuff. So you bring in AR, VR into this mix, and just like HoloLens, right? $3,000. Who's going to buy it? But again, not a consumer device. It's a device that's more of a prototype to build off of, get feedback, and then create the consumer device. That's the same with the laptop. So all this technology, I think, is really exciting. It's stuff that's not out there right now. Now I know technically the laptop is not the first of its kind. There's the Atrix that came out years ago. The problem with the Atrix was multitude. The processors were not nearly as good back then. So it wanted to do more than it could, which is kind of actually where Continuum is today. But, the processors weren't good. Battery life wasn't that great. There's also the limitation of 4G LTE networks, where they're way more prevalent today than they were years ago, which means like this device only works so well if you have connectivity. But Wi-Fi and 4G is kind of everywhere in the US at this point, making a mobile device that can connect up to these networks as your phone a little bit more sense. And the UWP model, right? The idea of being able to scale these apps everywhere makes more sense too. So I don't know. It's exciting stuff. I'm at least glad Microsoft's trying new ideas. It's like that's the only way this stuff is going to get solved. It's not like, if you look at what Mac OS is right now, it's like, okay, they've added some cool features. And don't get me wrong, a lot of cool stuff in Mac OS. But I feel like they've lost that innovative edge, right? A lot of it's going to iOS, which is probably smart. That's probably their future is iOS. But I don't know. No one else is really kind of doing this stuff, and I think it's interesting.
Yeah. This is going to be a long podcast.
Yeah. Well, we can actually just skip to the one more topic and keep it short.
All right. I can mention the new build fast. There's nothing in anyway. There was a new build this week. Build 14977, pretty boring build, wasn't released for PC, only mobile, includes EPUB support in Edge, which was a thing in the desktop build last week, or the week before last. So now it's come to mobile, which is very nice. Then a number of fixes and change and improvements under the hood and whatnot. But overall, a very lackluster build, I'd say. A lot of these builds, the Insider, I'm going to rip on the Insider program, I apologise. I don't know what's happened, but the Insider program 6 months ago was way more exciting than this. Redstone 2 has just been boring. So far, just super boring. And I'm still waiting for it to pick up. I don't know when it will, but I hope it does at some point. I mean, what they showed of the My People stuff is kind of the most exciting thing that I think is coming in the creators update, and that's nowhere to be seen yet. Hopefully that shows up at some point. They've been working on it for 2 years after all. There was also a new build for the release preview, build 14393.479, and that breaks tap to pay, as I learnt about 5 minutes ago. So if you update to that, one of the known issues is tap to pay is broken. But apart from that, just again, it's a cumulative update, so fixes under the hood and stuff. And that's pretty much it for this week's builds. So pretty boring week.
Yeah, it's I mean, I'm running out of my Elite X3. Everything feels pretty good so far. I'm still working with Microsoft on getting my Elite X3. Didn't get the third firmware update because it's on fast ring, and that seems to be an issue. My production device got it, of course, so I'm trying to work with Microsoft there. But yeah, I mean, right now it's kind of weird. Production versus fast ring doesn't really feel too much different. Although, as we said earlier, that with this new fast ring build, they did change the way apps are rendering their graphics, and
yes,
that's some really interesting stuff. I can't say I've noticed anything different. It doesn't feel faster, as the long-running joke goes. But this is still laying the groundwork, I think, for a lot of these new features. It's one thing that's kind of cool about how this all works is stuff will come through app updates, not necessarily always OS updates. So yeah, I still think we're not until January, but I think it was like that with the anniversary update too, where we didn't see a lot of like cool features get lit up until towards the very end.
I guess. I mean,
so
I don't remember anymore. Oh yeah, there was one build. There was one build that had like the new action center location for the notification button, which was like, yeah, huge change. I love shell changes. They're like the biggest things to me. I don't care about Paint 3D or anything like that. If something moves on the taskbar, that's big news to me. So,
well, yeah, hopefully we'll start to see more. But yeah, that's usually been our experience. But yeah, I agree. When you do live build to build, you don't appreciate all the changes until someone puts that giant list in front of your face and you go, oh, that's right, they did do that, and I forgot.
Yeah.
And I actually do notice that sometimes when I do use devices side by side, one on production and one on fast ring, I often want to use the fast ring because it has that feature. Like for the longest time, it was like the Skype preview with SMS stuff syncing was only on fast ring, and some of these other before the anniversary update for me was the hero image thing and the abilities for notifications. You had a lot more options. I got really used to those. And so, yeah, hopefully we'll start to see more heading into 2017. But, we're in December right now. I expect
nothing.
One, maybe two more releases.
Of nothing.
Yeah, probably of nothing. But under, and nothing significant before the holiday hits, and then it'll pick up again. So, yeah, probably not too much there. But I say that wraps it up. And we'll do questions, of course, after the podcast itself. I guess I'll got 2 minutes here. I got 9 seconds. I'll talk about Fitbit and Pebble. So Fitbit's rumored to be buying Pebble. That's obviously not a Microsoft thing, but it's really interesting because Fitbit's actually a big partner with Microsoft. And, considering the band situation, which someone asked earlier about any news about Band and Microsoft licensing their technology non-zero. We have absolutely no idea what their plans are for Microsoft Health or Band, which is why I tell people my recommendation, if you need like a fitness thing, go with Fitbit. They have the best community. I think their app is the best as well. The best thing about Fitbit is you connect up with Facebook, whatever. I guarantee you'll have friends on it because it's so popular. If you need a smartwatch first, Vector is your choice. But what makes this deal potentially interesting, of course, is Pebble makes smartwatch like OS for their devices, and they've been doing fitness stuff. And Fitbit's been very niche as far as fitness. Like if you don't exercise and you have no intentions of exercising, you should change your life. But there's no reason to go buy a Fitbit. It's like it's more fitness geared, obviously. This allows them to branch out into the more broader consumer market. That's stuff that actually, Apple Watch is going after, but bring the best of both worlds. And the rumor has it that they're going to buy Pebble mostly for their IP, and then they're going to kind of kill off the Pebble product line, which I think makes sense. Pebble products, although they're kind of cool, I have nothing really against them. I've not really caught on. And so that allows the creation of, I think, a really cool smartwatch scenario. And that's good for Microsoft and Windows 10 fans because Fitbit is very good with their app. I talk to the developers all the time, and they're already on top of the new GAT server stuff that is slowly coming online for Redstone 2. That means notification support finally will be there. They need it because they use it GAT server stuff for iOS and Android, so they want all their programming unified. Can't blame them for that. And so they'll be, I guarantee you, one of the first companies to get this out for Windows 10 users. And that's cool because then they create a new device here with this Pebble stuff. Of course, I don't think we'll see that for another year, but, it'll be right there with Windows 10 Mobile, Windows 10 use, all that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I think it's a good mixture. It makes sense for Fitbit, I think, to buy Pebble.
This is something that I just don't know or care about.
But you like smartwatch stuff. You just don't exercise.
Like Vector Watch and Microsoft Band.
Yeah. And you don't use Band for exercise, right?
No, I used it as a smartwatch. So.
Yeah. No. It'll change once you hit 30.
Yeah, start going downhill. I'm dying.
All of a sudden pizza becomes dangerous. And so, yeah. That's good stuff. I'm very excited, but always fun. So there you go for our podcast. Hopefully by the time this posts on the feeds, you should be able to read my Spectre X360 review. It's actually done. I'm just we're waiting on the video to be finished, edited. So go check that out. Spoiler, if you're listening to this live, it's my 13-inch Ultrabook of the year. And that's probably for 2017 too. I think it's the device to beat right now. It's a great value.
Even over the Surface Book performance base?
No, so that's the exception. I mean, I'm saying more for value. I can, we talk about this all the time. Yeah, if you have the money, go buy a Surface Book performance base and enjoy that. That is the best. But I think it's ludicrous to tell regular people to go spend $3,300 on a laptop. If you can, go get it. If you can't, though, take $1,299 and go buy the Spectre X360 because you're still going to get a Core i7 16 gigs and 512 gigs of storage, which to me is insane for $1,299, especially when you compare it to also one of my favorite devices, the Dell XPS 13, which is priced significantly higher. But read that review. I consider it to be one of my more in-depth ones, so it should be really good. We also have Razer Blade review being wrapped up, which will come this week as well. I think I might still do the Carbon X1 if you're interested in that device.
Surface Studio.
His Surface Studio hopefully will be coming. So definitely a lot of reviews. And if you guys have any ideas, there's also something else I think that Richard Devine is going to be doing. That new Asus. I think some kind of mini Asus device. Yeah. Oh, and then Mark's got some HP stuff he's reviewing, some more desktop homey things for PC. So very busy. But Zach, you have anything in the pipeline that we should promote?
A Lumia 950 re-review.
That's good.
Because it's a year old this week, in the UK at least. It came out, I think, last week in America a year ago. So it's been a year since the Lumia 950 came out, which is unbelievable. So I'm going to be re-reviewing it a year later, seeing how things have improved and whether or not you should buy it, if you can buy it, because they're sold out everywhere now. Microsoft doesn't make them anymore. So we should see about that.
Sounds good. Thanks for everybody for tuning in live, both on Beam and YouTube. I do prefer Beam. I think the audience is cooler there. No, I'm just kidding. At YouTube people, you're cool too. But there you go. Tune in next week. We'll, of course, do another podcast. And if you want to do this live, of course, you can join us for questions afterwards. Don't forget, on Wednesdays, we also like to game live. It's a lot more chill and relaxing. That's our Microsoft Gamings and Libations podcast with me, Zach, and Jez. Do you know what we're doing this week for that game?
I believe it's... Oh. I don't remember. What was it? Watch Dogs 2? No, it was something else.
No. It's the Overwatch. It's debating between Overwatch and Titanfall 2.
I don't want to play any of that.
I know. Well, we can just do Gears of War again. I'm fine with that, but... Yeah, exactly. You just don't like gaming. That's fine. Anyway, join us for that. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.